Some people spend their entire lives trying to earn respect. Others lose it in a single day, even when they did absolutely nothing wrong. Before we begin, if you enjoy powerful military stories about courage, sacrifice, and justice, subscribe to Hidden Truth Chronicles. Every story reminds us that the truth doesn't always arrive on time, but when it does, it changes everything. My name is Rebecca Morgan. For 12 years, people believed I was a coward. Not because anyone saw me run from danger. Not because I failed my soldiers. But because I resigned from the United States Army only 3 months after returning from my final deployment. Rumors spread faster than facts. They say she froze under pressure. I heard she refused an order. My cousin served with someone who said she couldn't handle combat. I never corrected them. Not because they were right. Because I wasn't allowed to. The papers I signed the day I came home made one thing painfully clear. Everything about Operation Iron Valley was classified. If I spoke, I could face prison. So I stayed silent. Silence has a price. I lost friends. I lost invitations to military events. Even some veterans looked at me differently. The medals in my drawer gathered dust while strangers built stories about the woman they thought I was. Only 8 people in the world knew the truth, and none of them were allowed to tell it. 12 years later, I received an invitation to the National Military Heritage Foundation's annual banquet in Washington, D.C. At first, I planned to ignore it. Then I noticed a handwritten note attached to the invitation. Captain Morgan, your attendance is respectfully requested. There was no signature. Just those words. Something about it felt different. So I went. The ballroom was filled with decorated veterans, active duty officers, Gold Star families, and government officials. Rows of medals reflected against crystal chandeliers. Patriotic music played softly through the speakers. I wore a simple black dress. The only military item I brought was a small lapel pin from my old unit. No ribbons. No medals. No attention. That's how I preferred it. As I checked in, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Rebecca? I turned. Colonel David Harris. My former brigade commander. Older now. More gray hair. The same steady eyes. He smiled warmly and shook my hand. It's been a long time. It has, sir. I'm glad you came. So am I. Before we could continue, another retired officer approached. He glanced at my name tag. His smile faded. Oh, Captain Morgan. There was an awkward pause. I didn't expect to see you here. I knew exactly what he meant. People like me weren't usually invited anymore. Not after resigning. Not after becoming the subject of military gossip. He forced a polite smile before walking away. Colonel Harris watched him leave. You still get that? I smiled faintly. I'm used to it. He looked disappointed. You shouldn't have had to be. Dinner began. Stories were shared. Awards were presented. Veterans stood as their names were announced. The audience applauded each one. Then the master of ceremonies stepped back to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have one final presentation. It concerns an operation that remained classified for more than a decade. A murmur spread through the ballroom. Earlier this year, the Department of Defense officially declassified portions of Operation Iron Valley. My heart skipped. Operation Iron Valley? The room suddenly felt very quiet. The presenter continued. And tonight, we are finally authorized to recognize one officer whose actions remained hidden from the American people for 12 years. I felt every eye in the room beginning to search for the unknown name. Then the presenter unfolded a sheet of paper. Would Captain Rebecca Morgan please come to the stage? The ballroom froze. For a moment, I couldn't move. 12 years of silence had trained me to stay invisible. Colonel Harris leaned closer and quietly said, Go, Captain. I stood. The ballroom erupted into polite applause, but it wasn't applause filled with admiration. It was applause filled with confusion. People whispered to one another. Rebecca Morgan? Isn't she the officer who resigned? I thought she walked away after one deployment. As I stepped onto the stage, the master of ceremonies waited until the room fell silent. Then he looked directly at the audience. For 12 years, Many people believed Captain Rebecca Morgan ended her military career because she lacked the courage to continue serving. He paused. Tonight, the United States Department of Defense has authorized us to correct the record. A giant screen behind us lit up. The title appeared in bold letters. Operation Iron Valley, Declassified Summary. The presenter continued. In August 2014, Captain Morgan led an 8-person Special Operations Support Team assigned to evacuate American aid workers and local civilians from a hostile region. Images of helicopters, satellite maps, and evacuation routes appeared on the screen. The mission changed unexpectedly when intelligence confirmed that an armed insurgent group had surrounded the evacuation zone. The room remained completely silent. Captain Morgan received an order to withdraw immediately. I closed my eyes. I remembered every word of that radio transmission. The presenter continued. Instead of withdrawing immediately, Captain Morgan requested permission to delay extraction by 14 minutes. Several people in the audience frowned. Permission was denied. Another pause. Captain Morgan accepted full responsibility and remained on the ground anyway. A quiet murmur spread across the room. The presenter looked up. During those 14 minutes, her team successfully evacuated 73 civilians, including 21 children. Photographs of rescued families appeared on the screen. Some people in the audience covered their mouths. But remaining behind came at a terrible cost. The next slide showed 8 military photographs. My team. Every smiling face brought the memories rushing back. Sergeant Lewis, Corporal Diaz, Staff Sergeant Walker, men and women who had become family. The presenter spoke softly. Captain Morgan was the only surviving member of her unit. The room became painfully still. Subsequent intelligence confirmed that if Captain Morgan had obeyed her withdrawal order, 73 civilians would have been left behind. He paused again. Most would not have survived. No one moved. No one whispered. No one even reached for a glass of water. The operation remained classified because it involved ongoing intelligence assets and international agreements. He folded the document in his hands. Captain Morgan carried public criticism for 12 years without defending herself. Not because she lacked the truth, but because she honored the oath she swore. He turned toward me. Captain Rebecca Morgan, on behalf of a grateful nation. Thank you. The entire ballroom rose to its feet. Not slowly. Instantly. Hundreds of people stood in complete silence before the applause began. It wasn't loud at first. It was respectful. Then it grew stronger. Longer. More emotional. I looked across the room. Many of the same people who had doubted me were wiping away tears. The retired officer who had avoided me earlier couldn't even look me in the eye. When the applause finally faded, I stepped to the microphone. I hadn't prepared a speech. I didn't need one. I appreciate this honor, I began quietly. But I need to correct something. The audience listened. People keep calling me a hero. I shook my head. The heroes were the 7 soldiers who stayed beside me even after they knew the risks. They followed me because they trusted me. They gave 73 families the chance to go home. My name is the one being announced tonight. Their names should be remembered every day. The room was silent again. I don't want you to remember me as the captain who survived. I want you to remember Sergeant Lewis, Staff Sergeant Walker, Corporal Diaz, Sergeant Kim, Lieutenant Foster, Specialist Reed, and Sergeant O'Connor. They're the reason those children grew up. After the ceremony ended, I didn't stay for photographs or interviews. Instead, I walked outside to the military memorial garden behind the building. 7 small flags stood beside a stone engraved with my team's names. I placed the medal I had just received at the base of the memorial. It had never really belonged to me. As I turned to leave, Colonel Harris caught up with me. They finally know the truth. I looked back at the memorial. The truth was never for me. It was always for them. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't proving your critics wrong. It's living with integrity while history quietly prepares to prove you right. If this story moved you, subscribe to Hidden Truth Chronicles. Here, we honor stories of courage, sacrifice, and the quiet strength that time can never erase.